Hello and welcome to the Legacies of Light podcast. I'm your host, Josette Leblanc. Today, I'm excited to share one of my favorite topics with you, synchronicity. This episode is all about synchronicity. Actually, this is a masterclass I recorded in 2023. And since then, it was just gathering digital dust in my Google documents. And I thought it was time to pull it out and share it. You can watch the video version of this episode in YouTube. The link for that is in the description. So if you want to catch that video with the slides and all this visual inspiration, you can catch that on YouTube as well. Please listen to the end because I offer some practical tips on how to increase synchronicities in your life. And why do you want to do that? Because the more synchronicities you have in your life, the more that you observe synchronicities, the more it means that the universe is communicating with you. And what does that mean? When you're in communication with the universe, so much is possible. So if you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe to this podcast. And here we go. Hello and welcome to the Masterclass, Communicating with the Universe, Activating Synchronicities to Align with Your Divine Purpose. My name is Josette Leblanc. I'm the head mistress and founder of Intuition Immersion School. And as with everything that I present to you, I'm absolutely delighted and excited to share this. This masterclass has been years in the making because it is one of my favorite topics. I talk a lot about this with my clients and anybody who really wants to hear about it. And I'm just so excited to be able to bring this information to you today. So before we get into the nitty-gritty and the details of what is synchronicity and how can we harness synchronicities, I just want to give you a little bit of a history of how this topic became such an important one for me. So it was about 2004 when I really started to understand that the universe was communicating with me through signs outside the normal signs of somebody saying, hey, you need to do this. In 2004, it was a few years after I graduated university. And up until that point, it was a series of, let's say, bad decisions. I was making bad decisions. Any decision is not really bad because it helps us learn something, of course. But when I look back at that time in my life, it's not one of the fondest memories that I have. But finally, I made a good decision. I decided to make a good decision with my life. And the universe seemed to reward me. So I know I'm being a little cryptic with the details, but I don't really want to get into the details. But basically, I made the move to let go of a part of my life. And when I did that, it seemed like things would pop up at the right moment. I would meet the right person. That person would say the right thing. And based on that information, I would make a decision, right? And essentially, this is how I got to Korea. So I met these people, these travelers from Australia. They were traveling in Canada. And through them, they told me about teaching in Korea and the potential of traveling and teaching at the same time. And at that point, I was in a place where I didn't know what to do. And it just sounded so interesting to be able to leave Canada to come to Korea or come somewhere in Asia to teach English. And so I always had that piece of information in the back of my mind because I met them. And then a year passed and it came to the place where I was put in a position where I had to make a decision. Should I stay in Canada to pursue teaching in Canada, or should I go abroad and see what it's like to teach first before I go to university? And so that's what I did. I came to Korea, and from there, the sequence of events just kept rolling. I met my husband, I got my teacher's degree, and everything just started rolling. Now, it hasn't been a perfect life. Absolutely not. And I got to say that every time I lost track of synchronicities, those were often the darkest parts of my life when I look back. But whenever there was light, the synchronicities would pop up. So we're going to talk about how that is and how that happens. So before we get into what is synchronicity, I want to start by saying the class premise, a few class premises. So the main premise that we're working on is that the universe is trying to help us align with our soul. So as the examples I was giving you before, the universe from my life, it was pushing me to come to Korea, or it was pushing me in the direction of learning to teach. And here we are. Now I have founded the Intuition Immersion School. So this is the most important premise that we're working with. The second premise is that as humans, we have a limited capacity for receiving information on a conscious level, right? Most of the information that causes human action throughout the day is filtered through our subconscious mind. So everything we've learned as kids, traumas, our cultural conditioning, this is all filtered through our subconscious mind. And so, really, when we are making decisions, we're being encouraged by this subconscious mind. Okay, so the next one is the third premise is that humans communicate with their environment both consciously and unconsciously via their physical and intuitive senses. So I make decisions based on what I see and what I want to do. I can consciously make decisions that way. However, as I said before, because we are functioning mostly on our subconscious mind, we are doing things unconsciously as well. And when I'm referring to the physical senses, I'm referring to our five senses. And then, of course, our intuitive senses, which are claircognizance, clairvoyance, and so on. You can learn more about that in my free program called Intuition 101, and you can access that in the Intuition Immersion School. So those are the three premises. Now, if you're here, more than likely you are curious about synchronicities and how to harness these, and this is what you're going to learn. So the class intentions are the knowledge and awareness that you're going to gain from this masterclass is you will be able to have a deeper understanding of what synchronicity is and how it occurs. And then from there, you will gather the skills. So after you put that knowledge, and this awareness into action over a period of time, you'll be able to leverage synchronicities to take action toward your divine purpose. So if you are not sure what your divine purpose is, and this is a loaded term, what is it really? I want to make a note on that. This is a quote that is from my course, Intuition 101. So let me just read it. Your existence and your natural inclinations are a manifestation of your purpose. If you're confused or unsure about your purpose or mission on earth, your intuition will help you peel away the layers of conditioning. Your soul, your higher self, or connection to source and the universe communicates through your intuition. As you learn to be more in tune with the light of this voice, your unique frequency and all the beautiful ways it manifests will come through. So now we're talking about intuition as the voice that will come through your claircognizance, clairvoyance, all your clairsenses that is mentioned in Intuition 101. This is absolutely a way the universe communicates with you. Synchronicities is another way that the universe communicates with you. So isn't it wonderful? We have these two beautiful ways that the universe is communicating with us. Now, often in order to receive a synchronistic message, we need to tap into our intuitive senses to make even more sense of that, right? So as I said in the previous slide, in premise number 3, humans communicate with their environment both consciously and unconsciously via their physical and intuitive senses. So as you're tapping into your intuitive senses, you have the ability to get more messages from the universe via synchronicities. And we're going to explore what that is exactly. So synchronicity. Synchronicity is a term that was coined by the psychiatrist Carl Jung. You probably have heard of him if you have looked into the topic of shadow work, dreams, archetype. He did amazing research. Highly recommend looking into his work. His definition of synchronicity is the coming together of inner and outer events in a way that cannot be explained by cause and effect, and that is meaningful to the observer. So this word meaningful is what we're going to hang on to, because meaning is the core of being able to harness synchronicities. So I just want to make a note on this comment about how he coined the term. So He coined the term synchronicity in 1920 when he had his first encounter with the I Ching. So the I Ching is an ancient Chinese divination text. And basically, the way it works, I've never used it this way. I have an oracle deck that's focused on the I Ching. But basically, you toss coins or yarrow sticks. Yarrow, I learned that a yarrow is a type of plant. And the way they fall will correspond to a number in the I Ching. And that's from number 1 to 64. Basically, I hope I'm not belittling the I Ching at all, but it's an oracle deck. Oracle decks are, when we pull it, by chance, the message in the card corresponds to what we're living. So it's very similar in my perspective. So while Carl Jung was the one who coined the term synchronicity, and that is the term that is very popular today, you see it all over the internet when we're talking about coincidences, it's also a sacred experience that transcends time and that has been acknowledged and elevated by cultures all over the world since the beginning of time. So, for example, the I Ching, can you imagine? Based on what scholars say, the I Ching was first written in the 10th century BCE. So, wrap your mind around that. So, today we use oracle decks, tarot decks, and we use pendulums to help us communicate with the universe. This is a way to harness synchronicity. Now, I call this conscious coincidence. This is not a term that I've seen out there, but as I do my research in synchronicity, this is a term that I believe that's what we're doing when we're using things like oracle decks, tarot cards, conscious coincidences. I coined that anyway. And then, of course, it's really important at the beginning here that we honor the wisdom of indigenous people across the globe and their connection to animal spirits of the land and how these are connected to the concept of synchronicity. So much of that sacred knowledge and way of existing has been lost due to colonization and toxic material gains. So these indigenous cultures have been connected to the concept of synchronicity and have been able to communicate that since their existence. And then, of course, another negative influence on our understanding of synchronicity or our ability to elevate it as a way of existing in the world is the separation of the metaphysical world from the scientific world. So we live very much right now in a world of either or, very black and white. But the thing is that we can't deny that really the world is functioning on the concept of ands. For example, there's a scientific explanation for how DNA manifests, right? And there's also a metaphysical one. Yeah, I'm mentioning this because, again, synchronicity is not a new concept, and it is just part of the way we exist on Earth. And we say it's magical, but it's also very normal, just normal, right? So while scientists may be skeptical of placing any meaning on the concept of synchronicity, calling it pseudo-scientific, so even Carl, as much research as he has done, his philosophy and theories have been called pseudoscientific. Even though they call it pseudoscientific, they have been drawn to the concept of synchronicity and the idea of two things being connected without any apparent connection, because they have had to, based on their scientific research, they can't help but look at this because it always comes up in the research. And this is where we come to Einstein, of course, or Einstein and other physicists, the concept of non-local communication. Now, I'm not going to describe this or go in detail here because I can't explain it enough. I'm a metaphysician, not a physicist, but non-local communication is the ability to communicate and send information in an instant. And I'm sharing this video here of murmuration of sparrows because this is an example of non-local communication. How are they able to move that way without really communicating, right? There's something intuitive, instinctive, and part of nature that is encouraging them to move in synchronistic motion, right? And then, of course, we have Einstein, who we're talking about quantum entanglement. And what I love here, I'm highlighting the term spooky action at a distance because this is what Einstein termed it. Based on his research or the research of him and his colleagues, they were exploring this, how two particles could interact instantaneously over a long distance. And he considered that to be just really spooky, freaky in another way of looking at it. It wasn't lost on Einstein that while there's a scientific explanation through quantum mechanics, it is definitely something that feels magical. Okay, so let's take a look at the language of synchronicities. This is the good stuff. This is where we start looking at how we can make sense of the synchronicities. So the most common one that we know are meaningful coincidences. So you think of somebody and they call, right? That's a meaningful coincidence. Another one is, if we're looking at astrology, is, for example, so maybe Mercury is in Virgo and you nail a big presentation. So Mercury is the planet of communication. And when it is in Virgo, it's amplified. When Mercury is in Virgo, you have a good opportunity for communicating more effectively. Now, that is a meaningful coincidence. If you follow astrology and all of a sudden you're doing this great presentation and you realize, oh my gosh, wow, Mercury was in Virgo. No wonder I was doing such a good job. Or maybe the opposite, you're having such a bad time with something and you're realizing that Mercury's in retrograde. Okay. So these are meaningful coincidences. Now, the next concept, as I mentioned earlier, conscious coincidences. Now, the term conscious coincidence is still something I'm exploring, but I believe that when we're using divination tools such as the pendulum, as you see here, tarot cards, oracle cards, we're consciously calling on coincidences. Now, a coincidence, we might say, in and of itself is not something that you can be conscious of because it happens haphazardly. But when we are pulling a card from an oracle deck, we don't know what card we're going to pick. We know that we're picking a card because we want an answer to something. We want to get clarity or insight. And we know that the deck we chose will potentially give us that insight. So we're consciously making some kind of magic happen. So this is what I'm calling a conscious coincidence. And it refers back to what Carl Jung described it with the I Ching. So then symbols, this is probably the one that you're very familiar with. You're seeing angel numbers on your phone. You see a car pass by and they have 555 pizza, right? Their phone number. Symbols. So when symbols come up, pay attention to, when is that symbol coming up? Is it coming up when you're thinking about something specifically, especially like something that you are looking for an answer to? Or maybe another symbol that have meaning to you are glyphs. So the symbol here, you have Mercury, the next one is Venus, Leo, heart, and then the infinity symbol. Now, depending on what is meaningful to you, these symbols or the symbols that appear will have more meaning. So for example, for me, Mercury has been, and I'll talk more about it later, but Mercury has been an important symbol to me. Mostly the god Mercury has been an important figure for me. And so if whenever I see the symbol appear, and it will appear sometimes on social media, somewhere like that, I know it's time to pay attention. Okay. And so let's go to the next. Another way that the synchronicity communicates is through archetypes. And again, Carl Jung is somebody to look to explore the concept of archetypes. So archetypes are universal models and patterns that affect personality and behavior. So for example, mother is a universal archetype, the concept of hero, the concept of villain or genius. And these archetypes may show up in as popular, historical, mythical characters. And of course, I give examples here of Neo. And for me, how this has showed up is sometimes if I have a problem or I'm pondering something. And for me, because I'm an energy worker, I'm constantly thinking about like the meaning of life and intuition and so on, and making decisions that are aligned with your soul. And it's so fascinating how often I can remember times where I'm just maybe watching TV, flipping through the channels, and then The Matrix is on and I watch it. And the story of Neo just has the perfect metaphor for me at that moment. Or other TV shows will show up and different characters will give the message that I'm requiring. And so these are some ways that archetypes can come up. And of course, we have the message here of spirit guides are also archetypes that can show up. So here's an example of for me, some major archetypes have been Joan of Arc and Mercury. When I was working with my coach, just as I was starting my business, I was working on understanding how the divine feminine was working with me, through me, around me. And it was incredible how often Joan of Arc would show up in cards, tarot cards that we were studying. My coach would call me randomly. She'd be like, "You will not guess what book." I opened the book and then who was there? Joan of Arc. And it was always these synchronicities. I was even once given a photo of Joan of Arc by somebody new that I met. She painted, actually, it's the painter of the deck, Kyle Gray's deck. Her name is Lily Moses, and she painted the people or the Ascended Masters in the Keepers of the Light Oracle. And she gave me a picture of Joan of Arc that she painted. And so Joan of Arc is just a pivotal figure for me. And whenever I see her, I know there's a message for me. And then, of course, Mercury is the reason why I am so interested in astrology and has been an incredible figure in my work, in my energy work. And I've gone down many amazing rabbit holes and paths because I've followed Mercury. Namely, an important figure in my life is my teacher, Eowyn Hart. And I was led to her because of her love of Mercury and her passion. Yeah, I recommend checking her out. And then, of course, we have animals. So whenever an animal comes up in your life, this can be a sign of meaning. Each culture expresses its own animal symbolism. So for example, we very familiar totem animals for Native American tribes, sacred animals in Egypt, Greece, and Korean folklore. All cultures have different folklore and sacred animals. And for me, I'll tell you a story. This came up for me when I was building Intuition Immersion School. I was beginning to work with somebody to help me build Intuition Immersion School, to help me build the infrastructure, Julie Le Carrère. And right before we started working together, the day before, I saw a kingfisher fly by, and they fly so quickly. And the only way I knew it was a kingfisher is because I could see the turquoise color just zipping by me. And this was significant to me because I'd seen the kingfisher years before at very important moments in my life as well. And the fact that it had shown up right before I started working with her was incredibly meaningful. But not only that, the last day that we worked together, when I was finally going to launch Intuition Immersion School, the kingfisher showed up again. So I couldn't deny the meaning of the kingfisher. And one thing that I like to do that I suggest, you don't have to Google everything. You can tap into your intuitive senses. But I like, for animals, I like to Google, or your favorite search engine, kingfisher spiritual meaning and so on. You could also specifically ask for specific cultures, and this information will show up. So if you can imagine how affirmed I felt when I read the first one. When kingfisher arrives in your life as a spirit animal, it heralds a time of abundance and peace. You have harvested the results of competent labor and began attracting good fortune. What a perfect symbol for the beginning of Intuition Immersion School. And so I say the kingfisher is our mascot. Okay, so then of course we have dreams and déjà vu. This is something that Carl Jung worked a lot with, and you can do. Track your dreams. When you record your dreams, you might start seeing a pattern, and those symbols might start happening in real life. And so that you start making sense of things. Déjà vus are also, or déjà vu is also how we know that there's something aligning. The universe is saying, either you've been here before, pay attention, or there's something, this is related to something you felt in a dream. So there's magic there. All right. So these are all the ways the language of synchronicity can communicate with you. There may be others. If you know of others, please feel free to send me an email. If you're doing this course within Intuition Immersion School, go ahead in the Alchemy Lab and leave me a comment if you feel that I could add more to this. For sure, this is an evolving language. So now I would like you to take some time to reflect on how the universe has communicated with you through synchronicities. Once you reflect on this, the next part will be to explore my strategy for communicating with the universe with synchronicities. And so take maybe 10 minutes. You can pause here, 10 minutes to reflect on these questions. What's your experiences with coincidences? Describe a time when events magically seemed to come together. Again, for me, like my story of coming to Korea, that was the time. And there's so many, right? So many amazing coincidences in your life when you take time to look at it. Then maybe there's a symbol and archetype that often comes up for you. So maybe you often, for me, again, Joan of Arc, always popping up. She was always popping up. And was that archetype mean to you? Okay. Now, so take 10 minutes to do that. And then when you're ready, come back and let's look at how I suggest to work with this. So here we're looking at activating synchronicities to align with your divine purpose. So again, this is what I'm proposing. And this is nonlinear. I'm saying a nonlinear approach for activating synchronicities because some of these will happen out of like not in a timeline, not in a linear line. So just it's hard to really explain, but once you feel it, you understand. So if we were to start somewhere, though, if there were a timeline, naming what is meaningful to you is really the first step. So for me, with the example of the Kingfisher, intuition in immersion school was something very meaningful to me. I was putting all my effort, my time, my energy into building the website, Intuition 101, understanding what was the mission, getting a lot of clarity around that. And so that was meaningful. I also had named that the Kingfisher was meaningful to me too. They feel very meaningful. Sirius has also been a meaningful star. This fixed star Sirius has been very meaningful. And the synchronicities that have occurred because I've been exploring Sirius have just been off the hook. So name what is meaningful to you. It could also be like, what is a problem or decision you're feeling challenged by? That is meaningful, right? So another thing that is important for you to do is once you do find a synchronistic moment, so one of the things, for example, an animal or the number or an archetype pops up, you celebrate that, right? Celebrate it, meaning come into, again, if you're in intuition immersion school, come into the alchemy lab and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was thinking about this and then this came up, or I picked this card and this is what it means to me. It's perfect, right? So celebrate it. When you celebrate it, you're telling the universe that you're listening. So it's the same thing. When you're communicating with a friend, your friend wants to know you're listening. So you're going to nod, you're going to ask a question. It's the same thing. You're communicating with the universe. Another thing, ask for clarity. Explore the meaning of the sign. So in this case, you asking for clarity, it's important to ask for clarity. So you might want to ask your guides or sit down in meditation and ask, why are these archetypes showing up for you? Ask your higher self, why is this important for me to explore? Then also exploring the meaning of the sign. So yeah, you can use Google, you can use books, you can you can ask your friends, but just asking for clarity will help you define the synchronicity a little bit better. Then be patient. So this is also part of the nonlinearity. You might want clarity and you expect the answer right away, or you expect the answer in a certain way at a certain time. And that's just not how it works. You have to be patient with the timing of the answer, of the meaning. It will come when it needs to come. The universe communicates when it needs to communicate and when it believes it's in your highest good. Okay. And then when you have some clarity, take action. This is another way to tell the universe that you are receiving the message. It's similar to celebrating, right? For example, coming to Korea, making the decision to come here. It was incredible what fell into place once I made that decision. When I got the hit that I should look into moving here and started doing the research, I would meet people. Oh yeah, I lived in Korea. here's a book on Korea. And at that time, I didn't really have a lot of money, but it was incredible. All of a sudden, I'd get money from the most random places, or I'd find deals on things that I needed, like boots, super cheap, and when they were usually expensive. That's me taking action on the insight that I'm receiving thanks to the synchronicities. And then, of course, rinse and repeat. So just these are the practical ways that you can harness synchronicities in your life. Okay. Then, of course, if you have any questions about these, please go ahead and ask wherever you can contact me via email or in the Alchemy Lab, of course. And then, final note on activating synchronicities to align with your divine purpose is astrological timing. So, using divine timing to leverage aligned action and amplify messages from the universe. This takes a little bit more practice. If you are comfortable with astrology, if you know your natal chart, if you know the basics of your natal chart, your sun sign, your moon sign, your ascending rising sign, you can make decisions or move with the stars, right? For example, another way to align with the stars is to do energy work during auspicious times, such as Lionsgate, and also during healing times, such as eclipse season. Eclipse season is a time of purging and releasing and exploring what needs to be let go of and what needs to be brought in. And when just knowing that can help you connect to synchronicities and be in more alignment with your divine purpose. And of course, as I said before, know your soul map. Your natal chart is a map of your soul. It's a map of why you incarnated at this time. And so when you get to know your natal chart, you really can start looking at how the stars and astrology can support you in making decisions that are in alignment with your soul purpose. And as a result, synchronicities will just pop up, right? And then, of course, if you need any support with this, I offer a service called Destiny and Destination Reading, where I look at your north and south nodes. So your north node is related to your destiny or why you incarnated in this lifetime. And your south node is related to what you are leaving behind. But what are the lessons that you learned? What are the lessons that you've integrated and brought into this life, but are ready to let go of for the purpose of moving towards your north node? And what we do is I look at that, and I also look at the astrocartography of your natal chart. I use an app called astro.com, which helps me understand specific locations on Earth and how it relates to your specific soul map. And so I input that into this database and I get insight on specific destinations. So you tell me destinations that you're interested in knowing about, and I'll tell you if it's related to your destiny or not, or how it connects to your destiny and how it might support you in your destiny. And that is it. So that is how to communicate with the universe and how to activate synchronicities to align with your divine purpose. Thank you so much for your attention. And I look forward to hearing more about how the synchronicities have been popping up in your life and how they are connecting to your divine purpose. I hope you enjoyed this masterclass. I'm so happy to share it with you. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to share it far and wide with your friends, fellow lightworkers. And if you enjoyed my style, my energy, you might want to consider joining my Discern program. It's a year-long program for lightworkers who want to bring their work out in the world. So you might be suffering from feeling doubt about your spiritual gifts or your creative gifts, your unique gifts, really what you're here to do. And this year-long program is meant to support you energetically and strategically in sharing your important light work with the world. It's a year-long program, and within it, you get one-on-one energy work with me. You get group energy work with like-minded souls. You also have self-paced courses to support you with your visibility and your energy management, which is crucial for light workers because we need to be out in the world in a way that is energizing and not depleting so that we can be of our highest purpose. If this sounds interesting to you, the link for this program, Discern, is in the description. If you have any questions about this episode or about my work, you can email me at josettelb@josetteleblanc.com. You can also find me on Instagram at josette.thealchemist. My website is www.josetteleblanc.com and also intuitionimmersionschool.com. So all the links are in the description. And thank you so much for listening, and see you in the next episode.